Hello, this is John Feldt, and this is the weekly water outlook for December 16th for the Southeast U.S. You know, it's pretty interesting this week. I see some changes that I haven't seen for quite some time. It's been a long time since we've seen organized weather systems move into the region, so we might see some changes as we get through the rest of the month of December. But let's start off by looking at the last 7 days' actual rainfall. Now, some of the areas in yellow are experiencing rain from the current system, but for the most part, it's been pretty dry last week across most of southern Alabama, across most of Georgia and the Carolinas. Some isolated thunderstorms in Florida indicated by those streaks of red. We see a more complex pattern here if we look at percent of normal. It's been a long time since we've seen these pockets of above normal, and we're beginning to see a few of those. Florida had some pockets of significantly above normal rainfall. That's the purple, 3 to as much as 6 times normal for the week, the last 7 days. Across most of the area of drought, it remained below normal rainfall, or at least parts of southern Georgia in that area of green close to normal. And then we saw in Alabama and Mississippi, as well as Kentucky and Tennessee, above normal rainfall, continuing a pattern that we've seen for quite some time now. Now I want to show you the setup here. We have a system moving through the area as of midday Sunday. And one of the things that we haven't seen for a while is this pattern where we see streaks of moisture. Some of these lines are indicating the transport of moisture, and the areas of green are the pooling of deep-seated moisture. So we're pulling moisture out ahead of this front that's passing through here, and you can see we have a line of showers and thunderstorms. Now, what's impressive with this, and during normal times it wouldn't necessarily be impressive, but because it's been so dry, is that we are seeing some deep-seated moisture. We're seeing more significant lift, and we are seeing more significant moisture with this system. The big question will be not how much rain it will be in Mississippi, Alabama, and Tennessee, because in the past that region has received significant rainfall. I think what will be interesting as it moves to the east and southeast is, well, will it remain together, and will the rain band remain consistent, producing at least rainfall of a ½ inch or more? Now, the last couple briefings, I've mentioned that we're in a negative Arctic oscillation. This is our current reading, slightly negative, and it's forecast the ensembles pretty consistently to keep it in the negative range as we round out the year. Now, you might say, why is that important? Well, during the winter months, I talk about this. I don't talk as much about teleconnections during the summertime, but during the winter months, what it does is it can have influences on the jet stream alignment. And a good example of that is this image here. The dashed lines are lines of equal temperature. Generally, these represent temperature, and what you see here is a fairly tight packing of lines in this region, and that's where the tendency for precipitation bands to occur will be when these lines get closer together, and that reflects the jet stream dipping south due to that negative phased Arctic oscillation. So I don't know if it's as simple to say as the Arctic oscillation is causing this precipitation, but I do think it's fair to say is that it's influencing the alignment of the jet stream that's making it more favorable for rain over the Southeast U.S. And this is what we see here on the big picture. You might remember about a month ago, the jet stream was off to the north, and because of the negative phase Arctic oscillation, it sagged a bit to the south. And what that's doing is that's steering weather systems into the Southeast U.S. more than they have in the past. Each one of these little kinks here indicates a pulse of upper atmospheric energy. And in the past, they sort of maybe dipped down here, but it's moved up towards the northeast. What we're seeing now is they're moving much more into the Southeast U.S. and keeping that energy strong enough to continue to form precipitation. Now, the first system coming through Sunday, today, and Monday is indicated by this low area of low pressure and a trailing cold front. That'll be the first system. We have several systems, and that's what makes this interesting. We haven't seen that for quite some time. But let's start off with the trends and threats. Right now, looks to me like we're going to have a significant widespread rain event twice this upcoming week, producing 1 to 3 inches of rain over a fairly significant part of the Southeast U.S., but primarily extending from Louisiana over central and southern parts of Mississippi and a large part of Alabama, Georgia, and up into the Carolinas. Then tapering off a bit as we go further north and then south into Florida. I've indicated by that red dashed line the axis of perhaps heaviest rain, at least with the first system. What's interesting with this is that both these systems look like they're going to take a very close or very similar type path. Matter of fact, when I was running some of the models on precipitation, I was amazed to see how almost identical these paths were. Now that can change as we go through the week, but right now it looks like they're going to be traversing a similar path. Now what I've put here is I put the drought monitor or the core of drought, and what we have here is this area of red, and if you sort of look underneath it, I know a lot of colors, but this brown, but primarily the red is the deepest drought. I've also indicated the rainfall forecast, and I've put in a dashed line the heaviest rain. If this does occur, you're going to have a significant rainfall over the core of drought. Now, not necessarily the southernmost core of drought, but at least the core of drought that extends into east central Alabama, into a large part of the central part of the state of Georgia, as well as further northeast. So that's welcome news, assuming this does occur. And I wanted to point out how much rain was needed to bring the PDI up to a minus 0.5, or basically bring soil moisture up to a neutral condition. And over the next week, it looks like we could see some significant improvement. Now, it's not going to eliminate the drought by any means, but it could bring the core of drought, reduce the amount of rain needed by roughly 20 to 25%. That's nothing to sneeze at. And then areas that aren't as much in drought, such as the areas that have expanded quite recently, such as South Carolina, it could improve that area by 30%, and then areas along the periphery of drought by 30 to 50%. So considering this is just a 1 week period, and considering how dry it's been, I think that's significant. Now keep in mind, I look at when rain moves in on what will happen to the possibility of runoff. Why is that significant in water resources? Is because stream flow and reservoir levels are sort of a second and third tier factor after rainfall. And what I mean by that is, as dry as it is, and depending on how fast the rain falls and where it falls. So, for example, if it falls very fast, you'll get runoff no matter what. If it falls over a impervious surface, you'll get runoff no matter what. But in a general sense, a 12-hour flash flood guidance graphic here gives some idea of what will occur. And what we see over the northern part of Alabama is flash floods about 3 inches. And then south of there is between 3 and 5 inches. So I think it's fair to say, at least over the central and southern part of Alabama, across a very large part of Georgia, and anywhere that light blue, is most of the rain is going to be soaked up by upper soils and serve to recharge these upper soils with lesser amounts of surface runoff into streams and definitely into reservoir levels. Over northern parts of Alabama, where it's closer to 3 inches over 12 hours, there's a possibility of a little bit more, but I still think there's enough leeway for recharge of upper soils, is that most of it will go into that upper soil storage and not as much on runoff. But I do think there's a distinction over northern Alabama and northwest Georgia, where there will be more runoff than areas further south. Now, if you look at the sort of the timing of these rain events, what I wanted to show in the next couple of weeks here is the possibility of 3 different systems. There's a greater confidence in the systems this week, and this is for the whole Southeast U.S., so for any one particular state or area, it'll vary within these time frames. But orange areas indicate, orange time frames indicate wet periods, green indicate dry periods. And I think what's important to note here are the 2 rain events this week. The one that's occurring early this week and the one that's occurring later this week. We're going to have, it looks like 2 systems very similar, and that's, while other times of the year and other years that might not be all that significant, the fact that this is occurring during this drought, it's been a long time since I've seen this. There's also the possibility towards the end of the year of another rainy spell, but that's so far out there, models can flip-flop very quickly. We'll have to see how that looks as we go through the week. If we look at the total precipitation through the medium range models, this is through 384 hours to the rest of 2012, you can clearly see that axis of heaviest rainfall over the southeast U.S. Boy, it's been a long time since I've seen one of these areas in red over the southeast U.S. So there is some hope for drought relief as we round out 2012. You know, we're going to have to see. We know sometimes these models show this, and then, you know, when you're in a drought, there's all sorts of reasons you don't get that rain. But right now, through multiple model runs, it's been looking like we will be getting that rainfall twice this week, which will be making at least a dent in the drought over the southeast U.S. So the takeaway points from this week's weekly water outlook: there are significant changes on the way as the jet stream dips to the south and brings more energy over the southeast U.S. This should result in 2 rain events this week, an improvement to the drought, anywhere from 20 to 30% over the core of drought, and as much as 50% over areas on the periphery of the core of drought. Most of the rainfall will go into upper soil recharge, but there will be some modest stream flow improvement and minor reservoir improvement, at least for now, as we start to get these soils a bit wetter. If we do get something next week, there could be more significant inflows into reservoirs. Thank you for listening to this week's Weekly Water Outlook. If you ever have any questions or comments, am I covering what you'd like to hear? Am I not covering what you'd like to hear? You can always email me, john@bluewateroutlook.com. Thank you for listening. I will be updating this again next week.